Imagine, you're a teenager in the 2010s about to enter what people call the best years of your life, high school. Except, you're not attending school, you're attending homeschool, specifically a homeschool program run by a local Catholic community that only lets their students meet once a week. You're kind of bummed out by this information because it feels like you're going to miss not only a significant moment of your childhood, but a series of events that will define who you are for the rest of your life. But you hold fast to what you're given. At least you get to meet other peers your age once a week. So you wait for the acclaimed Grand Wednesday that you get to attend, and you're kind of disappointed. The venue is this brutalist building that was neither too old like the most acclaimed of universities, nor too new like the contemporary malls that Asia had to offer. You enter its elevators and found your entire school to just be this large yet too small of a room. The rest of the building being made to assist in the activities in the church nearby. Every classmate, teacher, and faculty member you will ever meet is in the room that you enter right now. A pretty small world if you think about it. You start to have an existential crisis. Damn, is this really what high school is like? You try to look for any positive thing to look forward to. But you just can't. You can't escape the path set before you. So you unwillingly attend the morning ceremony, the math and science classes assigned to you, the religious talk just before lunch, until the day is finally over. You find it hard to communicate with others because you're an introvert, and the stress builds as you do not really get the lessons being taught. You're already beaten up by the time you're dismissed. You wanted to go home. Heck, is that not what homeschool is all about? But before you walked out the door and got home, a cannon was fired. Music filled the air from a room next to mine. It was the school's official orchestra, and the sound I heard was Pachelbel's Canon in D major, a 300-year-old song that has no means in catching the attention of a Gen Z kid. I don't know what it means to most people, but to me, whenever I listen to this, I'm taken back to the days when I joined the high school orchestra. I played the recorder at the time, though I could never say I was good at it. Throughout the 1 year I was with the orchestra, we played classics like Canon and orchestral iterations of modern songs like One Republic's Secrets and Pink's Just Give Me a Reason. Songs that have no business being a part of my music taste, but who knew that a change of genre is all it needed to make me listen to it during my commutes to school. I left the club shortly after 1 year of playing because I discovered other stuff I wanted to get into like creative writing, art, and animation. But I can never forget my time playing music with them because it was the thing that carried me through my first few months in high school. And whenever I'm nostalgic about high school, Canon D plays in my mind, which just goes to show the impact that music had in my life. So why not I make music for myself? That's why. I took an entire year to learn how to make music for myself, but I'm going to be honest here. I have no musical experience prior to this year, aside from joining a guitar club back in middle school, the orchestra that I just talked about, a ukulele club that me and my little sister attended during the pandemic, and listening to the numerous songs I've put into a YouTube playlist. all experiences that I've forgotten about or neglected until I've written the script for this video. However, if there's something that my skill in 3D animation has taught me, it is that I have the capability to learn and that nothing will ever come close to being anything harder than Blender's node system. So, I set a goal for myself. Knowing where to start is probably the best thing for me to do first. My goal is to make music, but music in itself is a diverse art form with multiple genres. What do you want to make? Electronic? Pop? Ambient? Will there even be singing at all? After thinking for a bit, I set a goal that pretty much aligns itself with the things I'm already doing. So I decided to make an official soundtrack that accompanies the videos and time lapses I make for this channel. So basically background music. For the layman, the first thing you may think of when you hear the term background music is maybe some tune you hear at an elevator or an ambient tune you listen to while you fish. But background music can also be video game soundtracks like the main theme from Smash Bros. Ultimate, Roman Reigns' theme, Head of the Table, or Portals from Avengers Endgame. These tracks set the mood for something epic and legendary. So the music I want to create is more so something that is created for the purpose of switching the mood of a given scenario. So I looked around online for an easy way to make these kinds of music. And this is where I stumbled upon a powerful tool known as the Digital Audio Workstation. Now, as much as what the name implies, a digital audio workstation, or DAW for short, is not a place that you can go to. To explain, I had to take you guys all the way back to the golden age of video games. Why video games? Well, we'll get into that when I do a video essay trope wherein I give a history lesson to something so minute. In the before time of the NES and the Sega Genesis, games were very small in terms of storage space. To give you guys an idea, the original Super Mario Bros. Was only 32 kilobytes, but this poor drawing of a Lear from Fire Emblem Engage I did a few months ago costed 787 kilobytes. The reason why games were this small was because we did not have the technology yet to store large amounts of data. But if you look at games today that goes towards gigabytes, you have to ask yourself, how did Super Mario Bros. Pack so much content into one cartridge? Well, it is through sampling. Loading one big chunk of a level may be too much for a CPU to handle, but if you tell a system to just memorize the design of a few blocks and copy it throughout an entire level in this pattern, that would consume less storage. Think of it like uttering a word in the English language. It is easy for a child to memorize how we utter the 27 letters of the English language than it is for them to memorize how every word in the dictionary would sound like. Same goes for computers. So, what does this have to do with music? Well, if you listen to how the music for these old games sound like, you can kind of notice that the notes they play are pitched up or pitched down versions of an original note. So what composers of this era of video games would usually do is record or sample themselves playing one note of an instrument and taking that sample to an audio workstation wherein a person in a computer will create versions of these notes to make a scale and rearranging them to make the songs that are now very iconic in video game history. I will leave a link to a video that does a deep dive in video game sampling by Toffee Bun in the description if you guys are interested in the history and technology behind DAWs. But this method of making music is not only smaller in size for the technology at that time, it is also easily accessible. As time progressed, people have switched to uploading full natural soundtracks of their games using real instruments, but the method of sampling still exists for indie developers that do not have the resources to hire a full-blown orchestra. A programmer may not have a guitar lying around, but they do have a computer that can download a bunch of sample tracks that sound like songs. So why don't we use a DAW instead? I searched up a free-to-use DAW online to get myself started. Veterans would probably recommend other programs like Ableton or FL Studio, but I settled with LMMS. I know, it's like picking Microsoft Paint over Photoshop if you are a concept artist, But I needed to start somewhere accessible and simple, and LMS was just that program for me. So now you might be asking, if DAWs were that easy to access, everyone would have made a musical composition by now. Except, that's not the case. What is going on here? Well, DAWs are not a simple one-click song generator. I still needed to learn how to navigate its user interface, use the piano roll, add tracks to the song editor, import VST plugins to give me more instrument options, and finally, after all of that, I need to learn the fundamentals of producing music. I may not need the careful timing and muscle memory of a musician playing live on a stage, but I do need to learn how to put notes on paper and plan which patterns sound best, or else I'll make some shit like I'm not making covers of popular songs here. We're making original music made 100% by my own knowledge of the medium, or I guess lack thereof. So, where do I begin? Before I start, I want to shed some light on some videos and commentary online talking about how music theory is inherently flawed, destroys the cultural diversity of music, and puts a lot of objectivity in a subjective medium. As a Filipino looking at this, I can understand where they are coming from, and I don't dismiss this at all. I can't even fathom what real traditional Filipino music sounds like until I've researched about it for this video. And guess what? While they do not follow the guidelines set in music, it still sounds great to my ear. However, as a beginner, I would like to argue that if I were to make music that destroys conventions talked about in the past, it would be best studying what the current conventions are. As the saying goes from Sun Tzu's The Art of War, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not know the result of 100 battles. Applying this quote into making unique sounding music, you need to know what music you want to create. But you also need to know what the current conventions are. That way, we know how to branch out little by little and make compositions that goes against the boundaries of music and stand out from the rest. Here's what I learned from music theory when starting to make a composition. There may be so many different notes in the DAW keyboard, but really, you only need to focus on 7 different notes. This is called a scale. And a scale can be spaced differently depending on the mood you want to set. They can be 1 note apart, or in this case, a whole step, or no notes apart, or a half step. Let's take for example the major scale. Starting from any note on a keyboard like the C note, the notes in the C major scale are spaced as follows: whole, whole, half, whole, 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 and half. Notice that when we get to the last note, we basically start again with the same C note but at a higher pitch. So we can technically use the same sequence again on the piano, and we now have more notes to play with, but only 7 notes that we really need to keep in our head: C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. If we are going to structure a song using these notes, we would be able to craft a song that sounds joyful or happy. For example, here's a song I made using the C major scale. In another way, we can also try a different scale called the minor scale. Starting from any note on a keyboard, like the C note, the C minor scale is spaced as follows: whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Just like the major scale, you can repeat this pattern after the last note in the scale to find pitched up or pitched down versions of the same notes. So we get C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat, and B flat. This results in a song with a darker mood to it. Here's an example of one I've written in said minor scale. Scales are what I use to pick the mood for what I'm going for in a song, and there are more kinds out there that you can play with, like harmonic minor, which amplifies the dark mood of a song to 11. But for the most part, major and minor scales are what's often used by musicians because they pretty much give you all the range of moods you need for a song. But now that all the notes you need are picked, what should you do next? Well, it's time to make your chords. These are pretty much a set of 3 or 4 notes in your scale that you pretty much use to set the foundation for your melody. The way you make a simple 3-note chord is to pick a note, reference your scale, and take the notes 2 spaces and 4 spaces above your chosen note. And when played together, they sound like this. These pretty much function as the base to the overall sound to your song. The overall melody, however, is crafted differently among musicians. In my own experience, I find crafting a melody easy when you use the notes off and in between your chords, then pitch them one scale up or an octave up. With these notes, we can play them in as many sequences as we like, as long as it's within the duration of the chord. Then we can combine them with different chords and melodies to make a sound that may fit into one verse or chorus. Now, speaking of choruses and verses, I think it's best to highlight that music, even without words, is poetry. You can see it in how we would like to structure our music. Commonly, we have a first verse to introduce people to the song, then a chorus to get them hyped, a second verse that someone sounds like the first verse, but either with different lyrics or some notes played differently, a repetition of the chorus that may or may not have some alterations to it, a bridge that's quiet or different from the rest that is a great transition for what's to come, then a final chorus to put a bow onto everything. Notice how there's a lot of repetition going on, especially with the chorus. This is music's version of getting words to rhyme in a poem, or using figures of speech like alliterations or assonances. It contributes to a flow that people can understand, and in some cases, build a story or message that feels more impactful. Not all songs follow this repetitive format, however. Think of songs like Bohemian Rhapsody, wherein each segment sounds different from the rest. It never comes back to a verse or chorus, making it feel like everything is happening at a straightforward momentum for the listener. This is the part of music theory that I like to play with. There are some songs where I just include 2 repetitive verses and 2 slightly different choruses, while there are some songs that never try to repeat itself. However, in cases wherein I feel like I don't know how to extend the song, I have to admit that repeating a segment once again is much easier than making one from scratch. You can just change some notes in between, slow down how it is played on the second try, or have it be played with another instrument. And that's how I pretty much make my own music. I guess to end things off, here are some tips to make your song sound better. Add drums or some kind of rhythm in the background if your songs sound bland. If the simple structure of a 3-note chord sounds too simple, use an arpeggio instead, which is just like any other chord but the notes are played one at a time. J-pop songs have a BPM of around 170 or more, and if you ever listen to a J-pop songs, they're catchy as hell. And most of the songs I made that I personally liked are also around that same speed. Great artists steal, and in the context of music, that means listening to an artist you like and taking notes on what parts of their music you deeply enjoy and applying it on your own music. What else? Oh yeah, audio engineering. Yeah, increasing the volume of your instruments that always result in better sounding music. It's like playing your instruments right in front of a listener's ear. Jesus. Move back a bit by decreasing the volume, and while you're at it, your instruments should not be placed in one straight line. Space them out by adjusting each of their pan. That way the audio is distributed evenly and is equalized when it is played using earphones. I have to admit that I'm still not an expert in music. I can still listen to some of the old music I made and think about how noisy or ugly the melodies of some of these are. But at least I started somewhere, plus with my added skill in making 3D renders, who knows, maybe I'll make something great with the 2 skills I have in me right now. I don't know how to end this entire video essay about music, so why not I just show you guys my most recent song I made in LMS. And with that being said, go read a book.